First, the technical details of James Hunter. I remember no one is supposed to know about our friends dropping in on us. Oh, it's too late for that, Mr. President. It's all over town. And in the National Enquirer, said South, so let's keep it that way. The engineer gave a wry grin. The National Enquirer was the most scurrilous tabloid newspaper in America, and they often run stories about aliens dropping out of the sky, usually to visit brothels and to ravage some scantily fed nymph. Is it as good as he says, asked the President. The engineer nodded his head. And more so. I'll say, Mr. President, that as soon as you authorise the funds, we can start training these out in a month, 6 weeks at most. By the end of the year, there's no reason why every home in Washington might have one, and 3 or 4 years at most, every home in the continental United States. What about developing them for industry ourselves? Oh, no problem. Obviously, the large ones will take longer to manufacture. We may have to redesign the protocol slightly. It's not simply a case of multiplying everything by a factor of 10, 50 or whatever, but I don't anticipate any problems. What I would suggest, though, Mr. President, is that you concentrate on making exact copies of this. This size and output would be ideal for the average household. You think that's the optimum strategy? It's ideal. With one of these installed in every home, we won't need to run mains cables to housing estates and residential areas. That means regional and local autonomy. Think about it. You construct a holding tank which can be placed in the attic, the basement or a cupboard. All it needs is a strong rack. You fill the tank with liquid waste from the John. Mr. and Mrs. Public get up in the morning, check that the tank is full up, maybe refill it, and that's it. They give a backup cell in case the primary cell fails. It really is that simple. I see. And we can start constructing these things right away? Sure thing. A decade from now we'll have totally free energy, not just the United States, but the entire world. The only energy requirement will be for replacement cylinders, the real cost of which will be a tiny fraction, maybe 0.001% the cost of digging coal, extracting oil or nuclear power. And of course there'll be no pollution either. Just the opposite in fact. The President nodded his head and repeated. So we can start building these things right away. As soon as you authorise the funds, Mr. President, the Pentagon will begin manufacturing them. The Pentagon, he asked. I was thinking of this as a private enterprise project. The engineer shrugged his shoulders. I suppose it would make good commercial sense, but this sort of strategic development is usually undertaken by the military. Strategic, said James Hunter. There's nothing strategic about this, is there? Well, I mean, there's no reason why the Russians couldn't copy the technology, is there? The Russians are on our side now, sir, prompted Colonel South. Or anyone. No, said the engineer. I just thought that. Well, you thought wrong. Yes, Mr. President. Besides, this technology isn't ours to develop alone, and certainly not to sell. This was a gift of the gods, one might say. I was told it must be used for the benefit of all mankind, and I intend to see that it is used for exactly that. Yes, Mr. President. Do you agree, Colonel South? Of course, Mr. President. The Colonel turned to the engineer and said, if you'll excuse us, Dr. Pricer, there are one or two things the President and I have to discuss. Of course, he said. I'll leave this in your hands then, Colonel. Mr. President? He shook hands with both men, and James Hunter summoned one of the guards to escort him from the White House. The President had a busy schedule for the rest of the week, and although locked in the White House storeroom was potentially the greatest gift to mankind since Prometheus stole fire from heaven, he couldn't just drop everything and begin manufacturing solar generators. He spent most of the evening in conference with Colonel South discussing their next step. I suggest you postpone everything connected with this device until we return from Europe, Mr. President. We'll only be gone a week, but once that tour is out of the way, you'll have the best part of a month in which to formulate a plan. Good thinking, Colonel. What do we have to plan exactly? Well, for one thing, sir, we have to give this device a name. Yes. Any suggestions? South paused for a moment and replied, we could name it after the alien. The Ramu machine? Something like that, sir. It would be nice to honour him, even anonymously. Yes. How about the Ramulator? It sounds fine, sir. Right, the Ramulator it is then. Next we have to decide how we're going to fund production of it. Obviously production will have to be licensed. Licensed, asked the President? By the US government, sir. By us? Of course. Every machine has to be licensed. It has to be built to certain standards and specifications, if only from a health and safety point of view. Health and safety? It's new technology, sir, not just new, alien. What if something was to go wrong with it? James Hunter couldn't imagine what, but it was always a good idea to err on the side of caution. The following week he made his whirlwind European tour, meeting various heads of state and finances, then returned to the White House and retired from public appearances for the best part of a fortnight. Not that he wasn't busy, he had mountains of paperwork to wade through, but he did have time to discuss the manufacture and marketing of the Ramu later with Colonel South. "I think we should set up an American-European consortium," Colonel said when they were alone together. "Sir?" asked South. "I was thinking, remember that representative of Rothstein we met at the Brussels banquet? What was his name?" "De Beer, sir." "De Beer, yes, that was him. When we were talking afterwards, he said something about cooperating with the United States on future energy projects. His bank is already funding the new European Development Agency. He dropped a broad hint that in future they would be interested in working with us on similar projects. That fits to a T." "Oh no, sir, we have to use the US bank." "Well, they are partly American. Banking is an international business. They got branches in New York and here in Washington, I believe." "Yes, sir, but they're not South Life. American. American? Old stock, sir." "Old stock?" "Anglo-Saxon." The President was shocked at the implication. "You mean they're..." "Well, sir, yes." "Colonel South, I hope that isn't anti-Semitism." "Oh, no, sir. But what I mean about Jewish bankers is that you can't trust them." "You can't?" "No, sir, everybody knows that. And why do so many people do business with them if everybody knows they can't be trusted?" "I don't mean you can never trust them, sir. What I mean is that with something as new and innovative as the Ramulator, they just spoil everything. Let's go see Rockman, sir, like we agreed before. He'll explain." "Very well, Colonel. Make an appointment first thing in the morning." "Yes, sir." "With David Rockman himself." "Yes, sir." "And Colonel?" "Yes, sir." "Not a word about this to anyone. This is still top secret." "Yes, sir, I understand." 2 days later, James Hunter and his trusted lieutenant visited the mega banker at his Washington penthouse flat. Rockman spent most of his time in New York when he wasn't jetting around the world in one of his private aircraft, but he was in Washington at present to attend a conference. They greeted each other like old friends, as to some extent they were. Rockman had put up a considerable amount of the capital for Hunter's presidential campaign, and Hunter himself had been a member of Rockman's Foreign Relations Committee for a number of years. This was a private think tank which nevertheless exerted considerable influence over US foreign and to an even greater extent domestic policy, in spite of its name. After drinks and pleasantries, the banker said, "Well, James, I presume this visit has something to do with the spaceman who landed on your lawn before your European trip." Hunter laughed. "You heard about it too, huh?" "I did," said Rockman, "but I'm not sure what to make of it. One man at the Washington Post said it was a Chinese scientist who developed a new type of laser." This wasn't far off the mark. Hunter had no way of knowing how much the banker really knew, but it had been impossible to keep the entire thing a secret, especially from the most powerful non-politician in the United States. "Well, that's pretty close, David," he said. "Except that it really was a spaceman." The banker laughed, sat down in his deep armchair and said, "I should have known." Colonel South put up an adjacent chair as the President sat opposite the banker. "Okay," said Rockman. "Now what can I really do for you?"